Thanks, Joe, for being here with us and taking out time to do this.
Well, thank you, Meera. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to talk about a little bit more about your impact investing, views on impact investing, and how that's affecting the global communities around the world. Impact investing seeks two outcomes. One is strong returns, and the other is positive social outcome. This is also called double bottom line investing, of course. And it seems that in the United States, private equity has put in around $4 billion into impact investing this year alone. We're looking at a highly philanthropic venture capital community where investors are on their own financially supporting a lot of causes around the world. But increasingly, we're actually using the same principles to measure impact investing and to work with impact investing companies as we do with venture capital, which is as investors, we get in very early into these companies. We get around to building a very strong board participation. Growth strategies are based on clear milestones. Of course, risk-taking is an essential part of impact investing. What, in your impact, is the potential for impact investing too?
Well, thanks, Meera. So I guess I'd start by saying that I think impact investing is actually a really important topic right now in Silicon Valley because it turns out that the traditional funds that are making the most money right now are also happen to be doing that by having really interesting impact. So Formation 8, my fund, we just closed our second fund. It's a $500 million fund. We're a traditional, and not really traditional venture fund, but we're a venture fund run by a lot of the new generation of young people who've built companies. And our view on what matters the most right now for creating economic value is that you have to fix a lot of these big industries that are very broken, and it's a huge problem for the world that they're broken. So I actually think the biggest impact that we can have right now happens also to be very profitable. So I think it's a very fun time to be investing and building things in Silicon Valley because those two are very aligned.
Well, there have been pioneering investors in impact for a very long time. The Rockefeller Foundation, DBL, B Lab. They've actually worked for a long time to create the infrastructure for impact investing. And they've developed measurement systems, they've created certification programs, and they have also invested directly into companies. How do you create a balance between the need to drive impact and the need to be profitable?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Actually, Justin Rockefeller works with me at my second company I built, Adapar, and we talk about this a lot. And I think if you talk to a lot of these people, I think they're still figuring it out. I think a lot of institutions that are very well-meaning, sometimes when the investments don't go as well, they say, oh, it's okay because we have impact, and that's obviously not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to, so I think the thing you have to focus on first, number one, is like it has to be something that creates value. It has to be something that actually has the very best return. I think what you're going to see is that China in particular probably is not going to be as interested in this unless we can convince them what we see as the truth, which is that to actually fix these big industries, it is the most profitable thing they could be doing right now. And so I think the metrics are really important, but I think before you even go into that, I think you have to say like the metrics first of all is financial success and disrupting and fixing the industry, and then on top of that, I think being a good player in your ecosystem is important too. But as much as possible, I'd like to tie that to being profitable. So I'd like to tie this company's brand and strategy should be to be a good player in the ecosystem. It shouldn't be an aggressive jerk, because if it's a jerk, the people aren't going to get along with it. And I think you're still seeing a lot of big Chinese companies figure this out and learn this, because it's like a lot of them are very focused as they get very big on making like profit at all costs and pushing people around. And so it's similarly, like as I think you see a lot of more mature companies realizing that being good players, having a positive impact on the ecosystem, actually does lead to the bottom line as well. So I think only when those are aligned can you actually make this function.
Awesome, but then there is the entire paradigm of risk-taking associated with it. I remember when we started a fund for women in Middle East, Africa, and Asia. We wanted women to come forward and take up STEM jobs and entrepreneurship in STEM to create impact in the communities. And we decided that we're going to make sure these women are making money, which was an essential part of a social impact, to be able to create a community that in which they become role models.
Yep.
The biggest risk that we saw, and we saw a lot of failure, was these women could not keep up with the pressure of running a venture. They would just drop off, or they decided that they want to stop their career paths and go have a baby and not come back ever. So risks are crazy with social impact. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, startups are are really hard for everyone. And I think, no, I think for us, the way we think about risk in venture is that the whole thing is extraordinarily risky. And I think the most important thing is just you're betting on the very, very best team and best people. And this is also a place where, I'd like to see this happening more in Asia. I haven't seen it as much yet, but a lot of times the very best engineers in Silicon Valley and the very best technologists and leaders will join a company because they say, I want to be part of that mission. I want to be part of having that impact on the world. I want to fix healthcare, education, finance, government, energy. There's these basically they want, I think you can't get rid of risk in venture. It's going to be really risky no matter what. But if you have something that's really inspiring, I mean, a lot of the work that we've done at Palantir on the philanthropy side, I think actually has attracted a lot of the best people. And so it's actually really cool. So the greater impact has also led to the greater success there. And I think that's the best way to hedge risk is get best people.
But risk is also a lot about the culture. Traditionally, the way we have culture in Silicon Valley is so, it just doesn't care about risk so much as the culture in maybe China would. How do you get Chinese entrepreneurs to take more risk with regard to social entrepreneurship?
Well, I think there's a lot of challenges there. I think one dynamic you're going to see in China versus the U.S. is that you have even more difficult regulation and government ownership of certain big industries. And so in the U.S., if you want to say like where does innovation happen, it almost always happens first in the least regulated industries. This is true everywhere in the world, right? So there's things in consumer area where there's not that many rules, and so like a lot of people can work there and change them really fast. But if you want to change things in government or healthcare or big finance, or you want to change things in areas that are very regulated, that's a lot harder. It takes 3, 5, 7 years. And so you are starting to see a lot of that in the US. It's tough. We're having a lot of fights with regulators. The big companies quietly are always trying to like hold their positions by using the government. But we're making progress. It's working. Now, if you go to China and look at that same thing, I don't think you see almost any of that. Same thing with Korea. I was just over in Korea talking to the people trying to figure out how they enable more startups in there. Because you see lots of big successes in these companies in like the gaming industry. There's like probably like 100 different dating apps I've seen in China that are pretty cool, right? But it's like but you don't see almost anything in some of these more regulated industries because the way it works right now is the government official who owns that business is not going to let a new person disrupt it. So that's going to be a really big challenge. If you want to have big impact and really change industries that matter, you're going to have the government have some reform.
Then again, my question, this entire answer segues into my next question, which is measuring impact, which for the longest time with social impact players has been the largest challenge. What do you think? How do we measure impact? And then does every vertical have a different impact measurement tool, or is there a greater impact formula that we could apply to social?
Yeah, this is a really tough one. The politically incorrect answer, which I think is like an interesting one to ponder, is sometimes like the money and finance itself is a really good way to measure certain types of impact. And if you think about it, like what does a wealthy society have that the poor society doesn't? And there's certain things where you just have to try to get people to be good, but there's a lot of things around our education, around our healthcare, around how we're doing ourselves that's tied to the fact that we're economically successful. And so when you actually go into these spaces and you create greater economic success and you create better things for consumers, you create better things for everyone, I actually think that's the best measure. So I'd like to see, if you want to see measure impact, I'd say there's 5 spaces where I'd like to see more financial success and disruption. Again, it's education and healthcare. Everyone knows education and healthcare, but it's fixing government, fixing finance, fixing energy. All 5 of those, you change any one of those, and you actually have a huge kind of multiplicative effect on society. So I'd like to measure impact by having financial success and actually building new businesses in those areas. I think for me, that's the best way to do it.
And do you think you've emulated this through Adpar and through Palantir?
Well, we were lucky with those companies to be able to kind of focus first on Palantir's case on government and Adpar's case on finance. But I think in both those areas, if you make those systems work better, all the other things in society that are tied to that actually end up benefiting. And that's not to say that, I mean, obviously Palantir's focused a lot on like anti-human trafficking, a lot on disaster relief with the Clinton Foundation. We've done a lot of other philanthropic things specifically with our time, and I'm really proud of those. But a lot of people might not like someone like, say, Bill Gates would always be the old example, but I think Bill Gates has had like a huge impact with Microsoft, even before any of the stuff he did with his foundation. And I think those kinds of positive successes are generally a really good thing for society. So I'm really proud of everyone here who's working to build great businesses, that they're having great economic impact.
Awesome. If you were to create a list of impact investments most crucial to your agenda, which ones will be the top of your list and where?
Well, so I mentioned a few. I think one I haven't mentioned yet that's pretty interesting is Oscar, which is in healthcare. This is another area that's very, very regulated in Asia and very hard to play in. But in America, there's about $1 trillion of market cap in health insurance companies. And health insurance companies kind of run our system, and they're run really, really badly. It's not the fault necessarily of these people in the companies, but they're not technology cultures. And so there's like fax machines, and there's thousands of people calling people, and there's no real good data to keep track of. And they're the ones in charge of what gets paid for and how healthcare gets administered. It's a giant mess. And so being able to take like 100 really smart people and build like a new kind of 21st century insurance company that does this right and that does this with the customer in mind, I think that's a huge impact in fixing healthcare. So that's definitely one of my favorite ones right there.
So that's top of your list, fixing healthcare.
I think fixing healthcare is really important. Another one that I think is really important, again, I'm not sure they'd be allowed into China. It's called OpenGov. But I think, so in America, there's about 100,000 cities and municipalities, and they spend tens of billions of dollars on their software, and most of that software is from 30 years ago. And so you can go into a city, and you could say, what are the 3,000 areas you're spending money in? And you could build a regression versus other cities, right? And you can say, well, here's the 100 areas where you're spending twice as much according to the model as you should be. And you look at these things and you're like, oh, the person running this for the city has his business and he's like the brother of the old mayor, and I wonder if that maybe there's something there. And there's a lot of things like this, right? Where you can use data, you can use computer science, you can say, look, listen, government, which spends, I think $10 trillion a year are spent by cities right now. Something 7 to 10, it's something crazy, and it's a huge amount of that is wasted, and we all know it's wasted. And you're like, yeah, whatever. But I mean, that's like hugely harmful for our society. And there's awesome things computer scientists can do to come in and to fix these things. And it's not easy, but there are ways that when you build the right tools, you have the right allies, where you actually can fix these problems. And I think the whole world could benefit from that. Hopefully in the U.S. we're able to like push it first and then kind of show other people.
I would love to take you to India. I'm not too sure about China, but that would completely change the paradigm of an open democracy.
That'd be awesome.
And, well, thank you so much, Joe. I think we're almost over with the time that we had to talk, but thank you for taking out time and talking to the audience over and, of course, me.
Well, thank you, Meera. And it's a pleasure to be here. I think, obviously, China is not too focused on impact investing yet, but I really think if you look at what's going on in the world right now, a lot of economic value here is being created by fixing these really big industries. And so even though I'm really excited by a lot of what I'm seeing in China, I think you're going to see a lot more in these areas if we can get the government to allow us to do that. So it's going to be an interesting area.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.